Race 2 of the weekend is here at Moscow Raceway for the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. The championship leader is the poleman, Esteban Ocon. Left it late in qualifying yesterday. He was way down the times, 19th, until about 8 minutes from the end. He banged in 2 good laps, and they were enough to give him pole position for races 2 and 3. He won race 1 yesterday. No, scrap that. He dominated race 1 yesterday. Nobody could get near him. And it looks as though, after a disappointing by his high standards weekend at Spa, and the same true also at the Norris Ring, Esteban Ocon is back to winning form. Round 20 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship coming up. 24 laps in prospect. It's a hot day. It's a sunny day. There's barely a cloud in the sky. It is a new venue for the Formula 3 teams this season, supporting the DTM this weekend as they are for the bulk of their championship, and Esteban Ocon remains the man to beat. David Addison and Dave Richardson trackside. And Dave, yesterday Ocon was back to the Ocon we saw near the start of the season, where he didn't put a wheel wrong.
Absolutely dominant, wasn't he? Absolutely dominant. And he did do exactly as he said that he wanted to, and that was bring the Max Verstappen winning streak to an end. And he did that, and there was no question about it that the Prema Power team had sorted that car. The setup was absolutely spot on, wasn't it?
And this is his Prema Power team teammate, Antonio Fuoco, lines up second on the grid. He's had a real roller coaster of a season. Won at Silverstone back in the first weekend in the championship. He has not been a regular podium finisher since then, but he has had these inspired flashes during the course of the season, but it's not consistent enough. Tom Blomqvist lines up third on the grid. The British driver, 4th in the championship. Fuoco is 5th in the title race. Blomqvist 3 wins, Fuoco 1. Esteban Ocon 6 wins, the man on pole position, the championship leader. Tom Blomqvist struggled a little yesterday. 4th he was. We were anticipating, given his mid-race pace, that he was going to get on the podium. The podium was rounded out by this man, Max Verstappen. 3 wins at Spa. 3 wins at the Norris Ring a week later. He won the non-championship Masters Formula 3 contest at Zandvoort last weekend, but he came back to earth with a bump yesterday. He finished in 3rd place. He was hunting down Jordan King, couldn't get there in time, and so Verstappen needs to dig deep today. He is still 2nd in the championship, but he's lost a further 10 points to Ocon. That gap now is 84 points betwixt the two.
And this was a conversation we were having as we headed up here, wasn't it? And that is the fact that Ocon actually just needs to keep points scoring and consistently points scoring, and Max Verstappen's threat with regards to the championship goes away still further, doesn't it?
It's 75 points for a weekend's work if you were to win all 3 races. So if Ocon can leave Imola 75 points ahead and have more wins than Verstappen, and that's looking likely, then he's going to be home and dry with 3 races to spare. But there is still quite a lot of the season left, because as you look further down the grid, and it is after Lucas our 5th, Jordan King, who is going to line up 6th on the grid. After Moscow this weekend, 3 races in 3 weeks' time at the Red Bull Ring, then it's the short circuit at the Nürburgring, then Imola, and then Hockenheim. So 4 more venues, but 3 races per weekend. Still a lot can happen in the championship. Jordan King had a second yesterday. His Carlin car differs in livery from that of his teammate Jake Dennis in the Racing Steps Foundation colours. Jake got a drive-through yesterday for exceeding track limits. Yes, I'm afraid the old thorny subject of track limits is as prevalent here as it is at many other venues that the championship has been to this season. And Jake Dennis, as a legacy of his drive-through, ended up only 15th yesterday. Dennis van der Laar qualified pretty well for this race. He's 8th on the grid. His best finish of the season has been a 5th place. He's again Prema Power team, backing up Dave Richardson's point that the Prema Power team and the Mercedes engines look stronger around here. Dennis van der Laar, the Dutch driver, eager for a good result after what has been a pretty mixed season for him. And on the subject of mixed, the same is true of the man who is next on the grid, because lining up 9th for this is going to be Felix Rosenqvist, the man who won the Pau Grand Prix. And Felix Rosenqvist has had a really troubled season, partly down to reliability issues, but partly down to an inability, it seems, to get a car stable enough for him to really drive confidently. And it's not just him. Others within the Muka Motorsport team look to have the same problem.
That's the point. Another point that we discussed before coming up here. When you look at the strength of some teams and perhaps the weakness of some others, and just seems that Muka Motorsport haven't quite nailed it this year.
they've had their good days.
Yeah.
Hockenheim, Lucas Auer had a win. At Po, Felix Rosenqvist had a win, although that was not necessarily a given. But other days, they've been all at sea.
It's been the exception to the rather than the rule, though, hasn't it? And perhaps, we expected going into this season 2014 that they would be certainly up there. And Felix Rosenqvist, as part of that team, would be the one that we would have thought would be the best of all of them. And he's really, I think it's fair to say, underperformed in comparison to our expectations.
Indeed. But whether it's the driver underperforming or because of the car, I think each would tell you a different story now, but it's a frustrating season, almost a season wasted for Felix Rosenqvist, who needs that momentum to move on and up. As you look at Esteban Ocon, we keep talking about the fact that he's had these 6 wins now and that he's the championship leader, but don't forget he's doing it in his rookie year as well. So when he's on the podium, he's always there twice because he comes back for the rookie podium as well. He has raced here and been on the podium in Formula Renault Euro Cup, so he knows the circuit. And I suspect he is going to be very hard to beat in this 20th round of the championship. Pending, of course, a good start. This is a slightly unusual venue in as much as it's an anti-clockwise lap. Therefore, the first corner is a left-hander. The racing line is on the outside. That's why on the staggered grid, Esteban Ocon is on the outside. Antonio Fuoco there will be on the inside of the circuit, but a length back on this staggered grid. But there's that extra grip on the outside, which is, as I say, the racing line down to turn 1. If Fuoco can make a good start, he might be able to take the battle to Ocon. But yesterday, as the engines now fire up, Ocon just drove away from them. We've had the 1-minute board. Engines fire up here at Moscow Raceway. The engineers will clear the grid. They will have one final warming up lap. That will get some warmth into the Hankook tyres on which everybody runs. And if you follow the championship, you'll know that everybody is in a Dallara chassis. It's not by regulation, it's just by market forces that Dallara is the car to have, as it has been now since the early 90s in Formula 3. Globally, but we do have the battle between the engine brands, Mercedes and Volkswagen. It is an all Mercedes-Benz front row and all Volkswagen second row, and you've also got the contest with the teams, Prema Power Team ahead of Carlin, Van Amersfoort, Mucker, and then Carlin within the top 6. The grid is formed, the green lights will go on in a moment. The race director, Sven Stopper, will release the cars. I touched on track limits a moment ago. It is going to be a talking point, I'm afraid, throughout the race, and we'll do our best to keep you updated. I'll say do our best because so many people were being warned yesterday. There are 2 key areas which are being monitored by the officials, and there are cameras at turns 1 and 13. In other words, the first and the last corners on the lap. These cameras are in HD. They have different angles that the officials can choose from as well, so they can be absolutely sure that if somebody has put all 4 wheels over the white line, then it is a penalty. Yesterday, 1 or 2 people did that because they were forced offline, and any warning was quickly rescinded once they'd had another look at the footage. That's the Mercedes-AMG Arena, the camera in the grandstand looking down on the first section of the circuit that is quite tricky and intricate. There's a bit of a climb. You hook left and then come through this corkscrew, plunge downhill, and at this point, the speed builds. The grid for round 20 is headed by Esteban Ocon. Antonio Fuoco lines up second. Tom Blomqvist third, ahead of Max Verstappen and Lucas Auer. Then it's Jordan King ahead of Jake Dennis, Dennis van der Laar, Felix Rosenqvist, and Nicholas Latifi rounds out the top 10 on this 20-car grid. A number of teams electing not to make the long journey to Moscow, and 1 or 2 drivers struggling with budget, so it's a shorter and smaller grid this weekend. 11th on it is Felix Sorales, ahead of Santino Ferrucci. Then it's Gustavo Menezes. Antonio Giovinazzi's had a bad weekend thus far. Jules Szymkowiak will line up ahead of Roy Nissany, then Tatiana Calderon, Hector Hurst, who was done for a jump start yesterday, Michele Beretta, and Sean Gallile, who was also done for a jump start, and they got drive-throughs as well. This is the circuit. It is a 3.9 kilometre lap. The 3 sectors. The first one has the fast turn 1 and then the intricate turns 2, 3 and 4. Middle sector starts off quickly and then has the tricky bit that drops you down and then back uphill. And the third sector largely is a straight and a corner. And this is where yesterday overtaking was being done into this final very tight left-hander.
It is a tight left-hander. It's very nearly a hairpin. And what sometimes the cameras don't allow you to see is the approach to that turn 13 is quite uphill. You and I, on our arrival here at the circuit, did a jolly good track walk, didn't we?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
We realised, I think, after that track walk and exuding quite a degree of sweat, that it is quite undulating in places, isn't it?
It is a test for the drivers, and it's one the drivers like. They have likened it a bit to the Hungaroring. Disappointingly, the Hungaroring was not a place that engendered a huge amount of overtaking. But we shall see how things pan out, because they've had a bit more track time since yesterday's race in a brief qualifying session, and maybe 1 or 2 tweaks on certain cars will have helped drivers to now get themselves up the order. Round 20 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship from the Moscow Raceway is about to get underway. Green flag at the back, 5 red lights will come on, 5 lights out. Now we're racing, and a good getaway is made by Ocon. Fuoco is going to have to defend from Blomqvist, who's away well as they head to turn 1. They're going to go wheel to wheel into the corner. Fuoco goes second, Blomqvist third, Verstappen looks like fourth as they work their way. One runs wide, it's a Muka Motorsport car. It is Roy Nissany, he gets back on track. But look, Ocon has already been able to build a sizable margin. As soon as Fuoco went defensive, that just gift-wrapped the advantage to Ocon.
Absolutely, what a start from him. Antonio Giovinazzi further down the order bogged down and didn't get a brilliant start.
Ocon out on his own already. It's a Prema Power Team 1-2. Antonio Fuoco now is getting away from Blomqvist, who's there in third place. Max Verstappen, not exactly a lightning start. He's running in fourth ahead of Lucas Auer fifth. This is the section that takes them downhill. And then they've got to climb all the way back up to that long, fast straight that brings them down to turn 13. Little battles developing in midfield. It looks like Hector Hurst has lost time on the opening lap towards the back of the grid. But downhill they go for the first time. Let's have a replay of what happened to Roy Nissany. He was on the outside line. I think it was Santino Ferrucci he was trying to go wheel to wheel with. And really, there was not very much he could do. Yes, he did exceed the track limits, but he really couldn't have done anything about turning left because he'd have interlocked wheels. This is Ferrucci having his own moment. Over the curb, over the white line, over the AstroTurf and back on again. So, down to the end of lap 1. Ferrucci is under attack. Tatiana Calderon is 1 car but 1 behind. 1 or 2 heroes look to the inside. Gustavo Menezes, I think, is carrying on his race 1 duel with Felix Morales there as they dive down to 13. He is, and he's ahead of his mate as well as they come over the line. Esteban Ocon leads by 1.3 seconds at the end of lap 1. Fuoco is second. And how about this? Down the pit straight, absolutely wheel to wheel, diving into turn 1. Santino Ferrucci desperately trying to hang on to a place.
Allow me to jump in with my judicial review, as always, and that is car number 8, Michele Beretta, under investigation for a jump start and being awarded a drive-through penalty straight away. And into the pit lane, David.
Is Hector Hurst, I'm afraid, from the back of the grid, so problems for him. Yesterday, Beretta was investigated by the stewards for assorted offences, largely to do with track limits and others, while now he's drawn attention to himself right from the word go. So poor El Beretta is having a pretty miserable time here in Russia as the race leader, Esteban Ocon, in complete contrast, is looking very impressive indeed up front. There is Beretta, who will pit this time. The jump start didn't do him much good, did it? Because no. I'm afraid he's still way down the order. Upholding honour now for Euro International. Early season teammate Riccardo Agostini appeared in GP3 at Spielberg and at Silverstone a week ago. We've only had 1 race this morning here at the Moscow Raceway, and therefore the track not exactly that clean. Not many cars have passed through, and you see how dusty it is coming out of that corner at turn 12. Ferrucci was the man that ran wide, but as they run wide and bring a bit more dust onto the circuit, then it's going to be a bit slippery, so more people will run wide. That, I think, could well, as the race wears on, be a corner where we get a few more incidents than yesterday. Menezes versus Morales, down to turn 13. This is for 11th, first spot outside of the points. And Menezes doing a good job of defending at the moment.
And of course they had a real ding-dong battle in race 1 yesterday, didn't they? And that battle resumes today.
Jake Dennis is under attack. Felix Rosenqvist is behind him, and they are squabbling at the moment for 7th and 8th places. It's Carlin versus Muka Motorsport. It's Volkswagen versus Mercedes. Rosenqvist on the back of Jake Dennis then. And thus far, people being a bit more restrained than yesterday about track limits. But if you get into a battle, then that could all change. This is Michele Beretta rejoining the race. A long way down. He needs a safety car now, really, to bring him back into the game. But this is a modern circuit with lots of runoff and internal roads and perimeter roads, so it's easy to hoik a car out of the way, isn't it?
And that's exactly what you were saying yesterday, that it's the likelihood of a safety car, not necessarily very likely. Nicholas Latifi and Lucas Auer, and also Roy Nissany now, just as you mentioned the track limits and how very well behaved they'd been up until this point. Let me take issue with that, because they've all been given the black and white flag, failing to manage the track limits.
Yes, I think you'll find I was spot off with that summary of how things are going. So, yes, thanks for that. Lots more to come, I fear, in this 24-lap race. We are only on lap 3. Ocon led by 1.3 seconds at the end of lap 1. It was up to 1.9 at the end of lap 2. He has just broken the timing beam as he comes over the line at the end of 3 laps, and he's now 2.1 seconds ahead of Antonio Fuoco. He is looking unstoppable, and from the pits, Dave,
it goes from bad to worse for Michele Beretta, who served a drive-through penalty for a jump start and is now under investigation for exceeding the pit lane speed limit. limits. Just pack up.
Well, it's not your day. It's not your day, is it? Oh dear. Michele Beretta then, as we look at a replay of the start, has this investigation for exceeding the speed limit in the pits. It's hard off that shot to really see much of a jump start. He may have crept a little bit out of position. Let's have a look from another angle. Lights out, and perfect start by Ocon. Fuoco straight away moved across, had to defend from Blomqvist, and therefore was a little bit hesitant, so he didn't bang wheels. And look, just coming out of the first corner, Ocon's what, 4 or 5 lengths ahead?
Absolutely remarkable.
That was Roy Nissany running wide, nearly having to pay to get back into the circuit. So why did he go? And at turn 12, running wide and kicking up the dust, Sean Galayle at the back of the pack was the widest of the lot. And Roy Nissany enjoyed his time at turn 1, so he actually had another go a lap later, battling with Michele Beretta. And then out of turn 12, same principle. You go wide and wider and wider, and if you're judging your pace against the car ahead and that goes wide, inevitably you're going to run out wide. Back live, down to turn 13. This looks like a great battle. It's only for second, though, this long line of cars, because Esteban Ocon has checked out up front.
You're absolutely right. He has 2.1 last time around. He's going to cross the timing line now, and he's increased by another 0.2 to 2.3, the margin that he has. Then it's Fuoco, Blomqvist, Verstappen, our king. Dennis Rosenquist is P8 with Latifi P9, and Menezes and Sorales P10 and 11.
So that battle between those two has now brought them into the points. So that's good news for them. As you look at Tom Blomqvist, going through in third place.
I need a little jinglet, really, to play to announce that there's yet another drive-through penalty for car number 8, Michele Beretta, for exceeding the speed limit in the pit lane.
OK, so he will come back into the pits to serve the penalty and then perhaps have further dramas. He's already had a spin coming out of turn 13. So where are we up to? He's had a spin, he's jumped the start, he's had a drive-through, he's got another drive-through pending. Crikey. Yeah. Well, at least he'll be on first-name terms with the stewards. I suppose there's that to look forward to. Heading downhill, Antonio Fuoco has got the measure, seemingly, for the moment, of Tom Blomqvist, because he's 1.3 seconds ahead, and Blomqvist is not really under attack from Max Verstappen, is he? Verstappen this weekend has looked, OK, decent enough. He's on target for a 4th. He was 3rd yesterday, but he's not sparkled in the way he did at Spa nor the Norris Ring.
I'm inclined to say that Auer is looking closer to Verstappen, just 0.6 between those two. Verstappen, you're right, he hasn't shone, has he?
No.
We will see. Still a long way to go. We're 4 of 24 laps here at the Moscow Raceway.
I think part of it, in fairness to Max, is that Spa, because it's a slipstreamer of a circuit, was always going to lend itself to action, but he did cope with it better than anybody. Norris Ring with the challenging conditions and a street circuit different altogether, but he qualified well. Then Nissany clatters into the side of Sean Galayle at turn 13. They survive it, but I'm not really sure there was a gap there for Roy Nissany. That was a little bit keen to have a go at that, but they have survived and still run 17th and 18th. But wide, that's certainly exceeding track limits at turn 1. Sean Galayle, wait and see what pans out of that. He's got Nissany on his tail. Going back to Verstappen, as I say, I think it might be the nature of this circuit, which is hard, seemingly, on which to overtake, and that might be conspiring against him a little bit. But likewise, he's struggling to bring down the gap. Even if he could get up with Blomqvist, he might be able to force a mistake.
I think a point we should make at this point is the fact that this is Verstappen's first car racing, isn't it?
Indeed, first season in anything. Now, this is the replay of Roy Nissany having a go at Sean Galayle, and let's cross live to our judicial correspondent, Dave Richardson.
Yes, a black and white flag being shown to car number 4, which is Roy Nissany, for pushing another car, and equally to Sean Galayle, as you predicted. He gets a black and white flag for failing to manage the track limits at turn 1. It's turn 1 and turn 13. Those are the areas that are seemingly causing problems. So we have driving standards flags, and there you can see it's confirmed from race control. 1 is for Roy Nissany, Sean Galayle for running too wide at turn 1. The race leader has gone across the line. He is 3.5 seconds ahead of everybody else. Now Esteban Ocon is very nearly in race 3, and Michele Beretta, I think, has rather decided, as out flings the steering wheel and the gloves, I think he's decided this is not the weekend for him. So a hugely frustrated Michele Beretta has decided to call this a day. He might have called it other names, but a day is what it will be called, and he's out of the race. He's got one more later on, but whether he's in the right frame of mind to put himself through all this again, because he's going to be near the back of the grid anyway after a poor qualifying, it's certainly been a struggle for him this year. Esteban Ocon, in the meantime, continues to dominate, and Sean Galayle's had another drama. Gets himself going. That's coming out of turn 2, but he rejoins the race. Santino Ferrucci is the next one to get a black and white flag for failing to manage the track limits.
And this was how the spin started, I think. He went wide at turn 1, that wagged the back of the car, too much speed into turn 2, and it just looped around, stood on the brakes, got the car stopped up the escape road, but he lost that place to Roy Nissany. Esteban Ocon, in the meantime, has a quick look in the mirror to think, I wonder if anybody else is in this race, such is the gap, because Antonio Fuoco now is a long, long way back. And Fuoco, in fairness, is fending off Blomqvist, who's not really been able to mount a serious challenge since the race got underway. He's been there or thereabouts, but never close enough to really attack again.
From that angle, you can see the gap between P2, P3, P4, P5, and they're all sort of evenly spaced out, so there isn't really a battle going on there at the moment, is there?
It's one of those races, I'm afraid, where, as you say, the gaps are equidistant. It's very hard for anybody to make up that lost ground, and then if you do get close, you end up running in the dirty air, which has that negative effect on the aero of your car and perversely makes you go slower. So what you need is to be really brave for a lap or two, get right up onto the back of a rival and make a very decisive, clean pass if you can, as soon as you get there. You can't sit behind for lap after lap.
Just saw Blomqvist with a little bit of a lock-up, didn't
Yes.
we? Probably feeling a bit frustrated, isn't we, as in comes Galil. Max Verstappen now being given a black and white flag.
Now, Sean Galile coming down the pit lane, he's not been given a penalty, he has been given a warning flag, so this might be a legacy of his spin. Does he need a new tyre? Yes, he does. So a new left rear, may well have flat spotted the other one in that spin, and that car loses time, gets back into the race. And you might think, well, look, he's way, way down the order anyway, now in 18th, which is last place. What's the point in going back out? Well, effectively, it's a test session ready for race 3. It's more track knowledge. He can work on setup, bring back more data to the team, and they can see whether there's anything they can do to give him an even more competitive car for race 3. Carlin, very much one of the top teams. The Indonesian driver, Sean Galile, will rejoin not that far ahead of the race leader, because Esteban Ocon is down at turn 13. Is Tom Blomqvist looking a little bit nearer? He was fractionally closer coming out of the middle sector, and the gap is down to 0.6 of a second between them. On that lap, he has lapped just under a tenth faster than Antonio Fuoco. Doesn't do him much good in the great scheme of things, because he needs to force a mistake out of the Italian. Gustavo Menezes, though, is going to have a go at Nicholas Latifi. Menezes has impressed this year with his ability to attack. He does get stuck in, and he went really well at Spa, got a pole position, 2 podium finishes there. And the American driver now getting onto the back of the Canadian, Nicholas Latifi. So there's a good North American contest building up here.
So let's see what Gustavo Menezes can do. He's shaken off his buddy Felix Serralles, who he was battling with yesterday and also in the early stages of this race as well. But he's left him good and proper now as he's taken this race to Latifi. So it's the battle for P9 that we're watching here, which Latifi has at the moment. But Menezes getting ever closer.
Menezes driving for Van Amersfoort, the same team that runs Max Verstappen, the team in its second season in the championship. Latifi for Prema Power Team, which is the team that won the first running of the predecessor of this championship, the F3 Euro Series, when Ron Briscoe drove for them back in 2003. So heading down to turn 13, Latifi has been able to just stave off the threat of Menezes on this lap. The American driver not close enough to think about making a move. Esteban Ocon has just gone over the timing line, and the clock ticks as we wait for Fuoco 3.6 seconds behind to come over the timing line. And further down the order here, look, is Giovinazzi, who is under attack from Tatiana Calderon, who gets the wrong line at turn 13 and loses a couple of cars' lengths there. Braked a bit late, I fear.
Yes, and that is the favourite place to have a go, isn't it? And didn't get that exactly right by any means. Tatiana Calderon, who got nerfed yesterday in race 1.
Rather unceremoniously.
Yes.
She got nerfed, I'm afraid. So Esteban Ocon then, yet again, significantly, Dave, is outscoring Max Verstappen, and with Verstappen only 4th in this race, then it's going to be a monster gap, isn't it, come the end? It was 84 points going into this race, and with Esteban Ocon set for a win and a further 25 points, Max Verstappen only 4th. He's once again going back to how he looked prior to Spa as very hard to stop. Verstappen's 2 fantastic weekends, to take nothing away from him, of 3 straight wins, really did add spice to the championship mid-season. But now it looks as though Ocon, and in fairness, Prema Power Team, have regrouped and are going about this the right way. And Ocon, as we've said during the season, Alain Prost-like may be a cliche, but he never looks the quickest, but he always looks the smoothest, and mistakes are rare from him.
you're right, and his whole demeanour when he's not performing the way he wants to, when he's not taking those race wins, it's very, very noticeable. And for me, that makes him out to be a winner, because anything less than P1 is completely unsatisfactory for him. Next to be warned about track limits is Antonio Giovinazzi.
Okay. I think the one name you've not yet mentioned is Ocon, who arguably doesn't need to be pushing on quite so much and therefore can stay within the white lines. But that also goes back to the smoothness that we've been talking about for Ocon. Now, Kelly Beretta has been tempted back into the car. Somebody's gone and fetched his gloves for him and encouraged him to go back out and have a few more laps in readiness for race 3. Let's see what else befalls the Italian. So Ocon it is up front. Fuoco second. Blomqvist still runs in third place.
And Jake Dennis now, car number 28. He's another one that's failing to manage the track limits at turn 1. The Racing Steps Foundation driver, Jake Dennis, who's currently down there in P7.
And significant that he's now being warned, because yesterday he transgressed more than the once and therefore got a drive-through penalty for track limits. So we need to keep an eye on this, as does Jake, because if he continues to exceed the track limits, then he's going to be in strife with the officials. Someone's run wide and kicked up the dust. It would have been ahead of Latifi, so Rosenqvist is a likely candidate for that. The race leader, Esteban Ocon, is on lap number 11. You're looking at Latifi, who is still in 9th spot, ahead of Gustavo Menezes. But we have a stalemate, really, within that leading group as the cars work their way down to turn 13. Let's have a replay here of running out wide over the curb. Jordan King, I think, who is in 6th place. Yes, it was King rather than Rosenqvist. Apologies, I called that wrong. He was the dust kicker.
Drive-through penalty now being awarded to Antonio Giovinazzi, so he's going to have to take a drive-through penalty. I think that'll be the 3rd drive-through that we've seen so far in this race. And I say thus far because we are only on lap 12 of 24. There is Jake Dennis, the Racing Steps Foundation driver, who of course was noticeable in race 3 at Norrisring for that huge clattering, for which he was given a grid penalty for race 1 yesterday.
That's right, and back into the pit lane comes Michele Beretta. So I'm afraid life gets no better for him here. Now, we have got a battle on our hands all of a sudden here. Jake Dennis and Felix Rosenqvist are absolutely nose to tail for 7th place. The Swede has got himself onto the back of the British driver, but if Jake Dennis can just defend for 3 or 4 corners, the threat may go away. It is going away because Rosenqvist's in the dirty air. His car becomes harder to drive. It goes that little bit slower. He has to back away. And the net result is that Jake Dennis becomes more secure once again in that 7th position. Now this is Verstappen, and he is
in trouble.
He is in trouble because Sorales has gone past him. Verstappen has slowed right down. You're absolutely right, Dave. And this is a car that is limping to the pit lane.
Wow. So Max Verstappen then now seemingly he's got it. No, he hasn't.
It's like there aren't enough gears. Some gears he can find, and then it picks up speed, and when he tries to change up, there's nothing there. That's Giovinazzi coming in for the drive-through. That is Dennis van der Laar, who has just made a move, coming up over the timing line. Van der Laar has got himself past Sorales into the points now. Dennis van der Laar is 10th. So you've got Giovinazzi coming in for the drive-through. You've got van der Laar and Sorales running nose to tail for 10th. But the really significant thing out of this is Verstappen, who has only just now arrived in the pit lane, coasting in, and it looks as though the Van Amersfoort team is going to have to retire the car. Giovinazzi will drive through and back into the race, but it's the other car, this one, that is the talking point. This is a massive blow to Verstappen's hopes in the championship.
Oh, and there's no hurry there, is there? Because if you're right, and I suspect you might be, all the indications were there of perhaps a gearbox problem, and either a gearbox problem itself or gear selection problems, because it seemed that he could get going at some parts, and then perhaps when he tried to select another gear, it wasn't happening for him. But the engineers are all, we can see from our high vantage point, they're all down there on the car. But
what they're also doing, Dave, just looking out of the window, is rocking the car as though it might be stuck in a gear, and they're trying to rock it and see if they can free anything in the gearbox. But we'll find out post-race, I'm sure. But what this does is take another huge amount of pressure off Esteban Ocon. We did talk yesterday about how Van Amersfoort had mechanical dramas early in the season. We thought they'd overcome that, but something has gone awry at a part of the season where the team needed it least. Ocon leading the way. He has now done 13 out of the 24 laps. 3.8 seconds is his advantage over Fuoco. The order behind is Blomqvist, up to 4th now is Auer, up to 5th is King, 6th is Dennis, 7th is Rosenqvist, 8th Latifi, 9th Menezes, and 10th, last point scorer, Dennis van der Laar.
From the pit lane, I can tell you that Verstappen is still in the car whilst the engineers, they've stopped rocking the car now, and they're continuing their investigations, but Verstappen staying in the car for the moment. Of course, if they could free whatever it is that perhaps has locked up within that gearbox just by rocking it and he could get out again, well, inevitably his race is utterly ruined, but, well, we will see.
But what he can do if he goes back out is assess whether the problem is cured,
Sure.
and indeed they can treat this now right off the race, but treat it as a test session, because the last thing they need to do is go into race 3 with that problem unsolved hanging over them.
Yes.
Now Rosenqvist, look, is dropping back again from Jake Dennis. We had them nose to tail a couple of laps ago, but now the British driver is starting to pull away once more. He's 1.9 seconds back on fellow countryman Jordan King. I can't see that battle developing, I'm afraid. Jordan King looking strong enough to stay ahead in his Carlin Dallara Volkswagen as the race leader. Esteban Ocon has just come over the timing line, starting lap number 15. Now what about Rosenqvist under braking? Can he do anything at all about catching Jake Dennis? Takes a different line, comes out of the corner maybe a little bit nearer. Last time around 8/10 the gap, so he comes through having ultimately lost a bit more ground over that lap. Menezes still hunting down Nicholas Latifi, but not close enough to make a move there. The Oakley supported American gunning for the Canadian, who is a more experienced Formula 3 racer, Latifi. His second year in this championship. He also drove in the British Series last year, whereas Menezes is new to Formula 3 and to many of the circuits this season for Van Amersfoort Racing. But Esteban Ocon, the Lotus Formula 1 junior team driver, continues to dominate here at Moscow Raceway, and he has not yet had a dream weekend in the same way that Verstappen has. He's had wins everywhere apart from Spa and Norris Ring, but he's not been able to do 3 in a weekend, unlike Verstappen.
And mentioning Verstappen, from our high vantage point up here, it looks like Jos Verstappen, who has accompanied Max wherever he has been racing, who is extremely cross and was doing a lot of gesticulating with his arms down there in front of the garage. Now walks over to the pit perch, so clearly Max's father very, very upset at whatever it is that's caused Max's retirement.
Well, this could well be a pivotal weekend in the championship, because
Yes,
if Ocon can bang in 2, possibly even 3 wins, and Verstappen take a non-finish out of the weekend, then it really is going to be a massive blow to him in the championship. He's going to go into the next race 109 points down on Ocon. Now, okay, if Ocon were to have a duff weekend and have 3 non-finishes, it's a game changer, but that looks unlikely given how consistent he has been this year. So this really is a very disappointing result. Underline it repeatedly in red ink for Verstappen.
Yes, and coming off the back of such success that he's had, continued success, you know, those 6 finishes in the championship has taken a very interesting line there was Jordan King as he's drifted that car around there. And of course, let's not lose sight of the fact that he took the Masters at Zandvoort the weekend as well, so he's been jolly used to winning, hasn't he?
Indeed so, but now he's going to have to get used to Ocon once more being the man on the top step of the podium. But it's not just that he's not won the race, it's the fact that he's got no points out of it that's the real killer for him. Now there is Jules Szymkowiak, who had his best finish of the year at the Hungaroring when he was in the top 6. Here he has not sparkled too much, the Dutchman. He is in 13th place, and his target, Tatiana Calderon, you can see just up the road in the Muka Motorsport operated Joe Zeller Racing tended Dallara Mercedes. Ocon's advantage for the race lead is now 4.3 seconds. And I know I'm tempting fate by saying this, but track limits and penalty-wise, it's all gone calm for a couple of laps. Either that or the computer's broken, because nothing new has revealed itself on the screen, Dave.
No, you're absolutely right. So what an incredibly dominant performance from Ocon. I'm looking at this battle though between Blomqvist and Fuoco, which I just wonder over the final third of this race whether that's going to heat up a bit and Blomqvist is going to find something from somewhere to try and get on terms with Fuoco. But you made the point earlier that once you're driving in that dirty air, you're compromising your car's performance, aren't you, and your car's handling.
You're right, the gap is coming down, but is it coming down enough? I mean, yesterday we thought Blomqvist was going to have a go at Verstappen in a similar situation. It never really clicked for him. And here, the gap to Fuoco at the start of the lap was 2/5 of a second. You can see over the last few laps how the gap has come down little by little. But really, Blomqvist is going to have to be a hero and make a dive up the inside from a long way back. Otherwise, he will get compromised by that dirty air situation. And Fuoco having one of his better showings for quite some time, because we've talked about the fact that he's had a mixed season. But Fuoco has yo-yoed up and down the leaderboard. The last time he was second in a race was back at Hungaroring. In fact, he had 2 second places that weekend. But the win that came his way was the third race at Silverstone right at the start of the year.
And with that fourth, the third and the first at Silverstone that we saw from Fuoco, we perhaps expected a more consistent performance during the remainder of the season that we've had thus far, and that hasn't been the case, has it?
It all went wrong for him at Po because he crashed early in qualifying and lost track time and struggled all weekend, and I think that affected him mentally. The gap between them is half a second, Fuoco to Blomqvist. That is Roy Nissany. After his earlier dramas, he's down in 15th position.
So from my vantage point up here, can see Jos and Max Verstappen walking their way through the garages now with that car has been taken back to the team to look into whatever the issue was. As you've said, we'll find out, of course, and we'll bring you that news before race 3.
Roy Nissany through turn 1. He's hunting down Santino Ferrucci and lapped quicker by about half a second last time. So the Israeli driver going after Ferrucci. Here is a replay of him coming into turn 13. The car just snakes a little bit as he brakes late. Then he has to line it up, find the apex for the corner. Let's see, does he run wide coming out of turn 13? He does, but that's all acceptable. 2 wheels over the curb and onto the rumble strip. That's all good.
Unacceptable from a car from the same team. Just as you said, the computer was broken. Felix Rosenqvist now gets a black and white flag for failing to manage the track limits at turn 1.
Right, maybe we've had the calm before the storm then, and we're going to have another flurry of them. Let's see. Not that we're trying to wish penalties on people, but I'm afraid it is part and parcel of when you bring a championship like this and these drivers to a modern-day circuit with all of this inviting run-off tarmac. People do run wide, and it does, as we saw at Spa and at the Hungaroring, affect things right royally as people exceed the track limits. Now there, Latifi versus Menezes. This battle is not over yet. Menezes thinks about the inside, but he's too far back from that shot. You can see what the gap really is. The leader has started lap number 19, Esteban Ocon. Now 4.5 seconds clear of Antonio Fuoco, and then Tom Blomqvist third, Lucas Auer fourth, Jordan King fifth, Jake Dennis hanging on in there at the 6th ahead of Rosenqvist. Then this battle of Latifi and Menezes and Dennis van der Laar rounding out the top 10, and it's been a while really since he was looking as strong as this for a top 10 finish. Indeed, he missed one of the races at the Norris Ring, didn't he?
Yes. So, well, the dominance of Ocon continues, doesn't it? 4.5 second margin over Fuoco, and interestingly, the battle that we were talking about just a few moments ago to see whether Blomqvist could get back on the back rather of Antonio Fuoco, still 5/10 between them, and I think you're right. It's going to struggle, isn't he?
And I'm afraid to say I think it's a nature of the circuit, because it certainly isn't a Spa where you can slipstream, and it isn't a Norris Ring where you can perhaps force more mistakes out of the driver. An uncompromising circuit like that. There are places where drivers make errors. We have seen them over the 2 races thus far, but it's one of those circuits a bit more like the Hungaroring. It's another Tilke designed circuit, incident, in the Moscow Raceway, and it certainly is a challenge for the drivers in a different way from many other venues, but it isn't one at the moment that is lending itself to as fierce racing as we've had at others this year. Over the timing line, that gap has come down a little, hasn't it, on the run down to turn 13. Fuoco goes through. Behind him is Blomqvist, and it's now 0.4 of a second. Auer running in 4th place, but even though these two are trying to squabble, Lucas Auer is not being able to get up with them. And again, that Muka Motorsport car, 4th is not disastrous, but it hasn't got the outright pace to run in the top 3.
No, you're right. So Blomqvist took 1/10 out of Antonio Fuoco, then over that last lap. What have we got? Into the closing stages of this race. If he's going to make a charge or a challenge, as you've indicated, he's going to have to be brave and try a bold move somewhere, and he's going to have to be close enough to be able to do that, and at the moment he isn't.
But for Esteban Ocon, this dream weekend just gets better and better and better, doesn't it? He may not know that Blomqvist is out of the race, but when he does find out, he'll be quite relieved, I think, that a championship rival has suffered. Now, this might play into the hands, of course, of Lucas Auer. He was 46 points back from Verstappen going into this race. He won't have made that up, but he'll have narrowed that margin a little. Dennis and Rosenqvist, again, it's one of those battles that's kind of not quite clicked. They've always been close. It's always been about to happen. But the circuit not lending itself, it would appear, to wheel drama between the pair of them. It's Volkswagen Power ahead of Mercedes, it's Carlin ahead of Muka Motorsport, and the race leader, Esteban Ocon, is about to come to the end of lap number 20, and we have a yellow flag somewhere, and there's the reason it's heading into turn 2, and it's Michele Beretta who has been off the road again.
And that is how Michele Beretta ended up in that. And that just gives an example there of this Tilke design circuit that you were talking about, and how lots and lots of runoff, which, as you said yesterday, almost has arms open, inviting.
It has been, in recent times, an aspect of racing that's this thorny issue of people exceeding track limits, but its purpose is a good one, because had there been grass and or gravel there, we may have lost Beretta into the gravel and out of the race, all with a damaged car. At least this gives people an opportunity to get going, and because of the friction that tarmac has, it does work better to slow down the cars. That part of it works fine.
Okay, is Blomqvist turning up the wick a little bit, causing Antonio Fuoco just to be a little bit ragged, because he's been given a black and white flag now for failing to manage the track limits? That at turn 1, and also being given the same warning is Jules Simkowiak.
Interesting that it's turn 1. One or two drivers yesterday were transgressing at turn 13, but we haven't had as much of that today. Ocon is now going to have to think about Lapri and a bit of a gesticulation at Michele Beretta, who I think he would rather like out of his way, and indeed Beretta will pit yet again. So this really miserable race for the Italian gets no better. Esteban Ocon now is free of the slower car and is about to make his way up over the timing line. He rattles off lap 21. Second and third come through. Fuoco still under pressure from Blomqvist. He can't afford to make an error.
See, Ocon lost a tenth there because of that. It was 4.7, and now it's down to 4.6 as you look at the car that feasibly held Ocon up just a little bit. Okay, how is this battle developing?
We've had the change because Menezes is ahead of Latifi. The change has happened, but Latifi fighting back at turn 1, and Menezes goes way wide and gets sideways, and Latifi back through on the inside. Great driving by the Canadian, really opportunistic. He forced an error out of Menezes. He dived up the inside. Good car control from Gustavo, and he's not given up yet either. The place had changed. It has changed back again.
Extraordinary. There is Gustavo Menezes then, and here it is in replay.
This is turn 13, and that's bowled up the inside at the very last moment, just as he did yesterday to make an overtake or two. Gustavo Menezes uncompromising. He commits late, darts up the inside, and lets his opponent sort out the arrangements. Latifi had to give him room, but straight away he's back on his tail and was then able to dart up the inside going down to turn 1. Look, Menezes there tries to move across and defend, but Latifi is ahead. It's as though that move never happened.
Indeed.
Not only that, he's broken away by a couple of lengths as well. So can Gustavo Menezes get back onto his tail? Easier said than done in a Formula 3 car. And again, this is one of those battles between Mercedes and Volkswagen Power, intriguingly. Behind Gustavo Menezes is another of the Prema Power team fleet. It is that of Dennis van der Laar that rounds out the point scorers. Michele Beretta's race, I think, now is run. And massive frustration for him. Helmet off, balaclava off, earplugs out. And he's very, very upset because it's been a very, very disappointing race in a pretty miserable season. And of course, these are drivers fighting for their careers. They have to find a huge amount of budget to begin with to go and do a championship like this. And if you're not delivering, then you're wasting that money, and you can see your career progression ebbing away as well.
Now, I've been able to bring you all the information I have with regards to discretions and indiscretions that have been going on during the course of the race, but a new one, if you like, and this is for Gustavo Menezes, and it's an infringement of code of driving conduct. Which
translates as perhaps not driving in a manner compatible with general safety, which is the phraseology that the MSA would use in British racing. I just wonder whether there's a feeling that some of the wheel-to-wheel stuff was a little bit over the top. It's only a driving standards flag, as you say. It's not a penalty.
No.
But clearly, he's being looked at, so we'll see if any more comes of that. I suppose only something else would come of it if he were involved in another battle with Latifi, potentially.
This is Fuoco then, and the gap between Fuoco and Blomqvist last time around was 4 tenths. Well, it's the back end of the race now. If Blomqvist is going to do it now, it's got to be done, hasn't it?
4 tenths, again, coming over the timing line. Blomqvist always looks like he's about to, doesn't he? But
yeah.
it's never quite happened. And just a bit further back, Jake Dennis and Felix Rosenqvist, which was the other battle I said a few laps ago, was always about to. It's now 1.8 seconds. Rosenqvist is dropping back at quite a rate of knots. So we're on the last lap of the race. 23 are in the book, and Blomqvist is running out of options, isn't he? He stared at the back of Antonio Fuoco's car race long. Esteban Ocon, though, look at that, out on his own. Everybody has the same car. Everybody has the same basic type of 2-litre engine built to the regulations by the different manufacturers. And yet he has just, again, annihilated the opposition.
You're absolutely right. As we look at Fuoco, and there is Tom Blomqvist, that's P2 and P3. And, well, Blomqvist hasn't been able to bring down that gap and really take that charge to Fuoco, and it's going to take a daredevil move on behalf of Tom Blomqvist to do it now. Here comes our race leader, Ocon then, and up the final straight he comes, heading towards turn 1. Esteban Ocon with an utterly dominant performance, getting ready to cross the start-finish line now.
And this is going to be the magnificent 7 for him. The 7th win of the season comes for Esteban Ocon, who wins round 20 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship from Antonio Fuoco, who fends off Tom Blomqvist for the final step of the podium. And Blomqvist takes third ahead of our King Dennis. Then it's going to be a rather distant 7th for Felix Rosenqvist. 8th will go the way of Nicholas Latifi. Gustavo Menezes 9th should be. And Dennis van der Laar for 10th. Except they bang wheels at the last corner. And it's going to be Menezes, is it, who takes the place? No! Van der Laar is given the position to the 10th, which is what our timing screen tells us. It was a dead heat. That Van der Laar, on hundreds or thousands of a second, will have got the gap, will have got the advantage. We'll give you the proper classification in a moment. Look at that, he went round the outside. They were wheel to wheel. Van der Laar off the road, forces his way back on. They make their way up towards the timing line. And on the timing screen that we're looking at, which gives us the gap to a 10th, it was 0.0, but Van der Laar put ahead in the classification. So we're talking hundreds, possibly even thousands of a second in order to really see what that gap is. But how close does it get right at the very end of the race between those two? Fantastic. It's just a shame that for Dennis van der Laar, it took him the entire race to really get there and have that go.
Absolutely extraordinary. You're looking at the winner, though, Esteban Ocon, as he waves to the appreciative crowd here at the Moscow Raceway. Here on the big DTM weekend, as we see a replay of him taking the checkered flag for win number 2 here at Moscow. Another supremely dominant performance from Esteban Ocon. There's Fuoco and Blomqvist with a replay of them taking the checkered flag for P2 and for P3, with our taking P4. But that is the man that we are talking about, Esteban Ocon. What a drive.
And, of course, as we were saying during the course of the race, his championship quest eased by the demise of Max Verstappen. It was an alternator problem that was the drama for Max Verstappen. Alternator, gearbox, much the same to the uneducated. So an alternator problem is what the team confirms was the issue, and therefore perhaps as it was losing charge, losing power, that's why the car slowed. There was just enough to kick-start it, but eventually as the alternator gave up the ghost, then all the drive went with it, all the power went with it. So, alternator problem for Verstappen, Dave.
That does mean it's a relatively easy change for the team, and there shouldn't be any consequences. The car will be, once the alternator has been replaced, the car should be exactly the same when he comes back out on track for race 3.
I agree. But if I were Van Amersfoort, as you see a delighted Esteban Ocon leap off his car and embrace Antonio Fuoco, my concern would be, how did it happen? Because nobody else has had an alternator problem, and it's therefore a strange kind of a failure. I'm just trying to think back to what it was that stopped him on the green flag lap at Hockenheim after his pole position at the start of the year.
It was electrical, wasn't it?
Thank you.
It was electrical.
You see where I was heading with that?
Yeah, fair enough. Yep.
Yeah. So, drama at the end, but once again, you've had a masterclass in how to win in Formula 3 from Esteban Ocon. And I know that when we look at people doing well in junior single-seaters, it is almost cliche to say there's a Formula 1 driver in the making, but France needs a Formula 1 driver. It needs a Grand Prix back as well. And of all the people perhaps that have gone through the ranks of late, Esteban Ocon is looking like a very, very good one indeed, and I think he will be deserving of a seat in Formula One in a few seasons' time. And the fact that he already has a link with a Formula One team in Lotus, and it may not be having a great season in Formula One, but the link is there anyway. And once more, the smile is on the face of a man, I believe, with a great future ahead of him.
I think you're right. We just saw on shot as well Tom Blomqvist, who perhaps it's fair to say, with the sport of Dragonia I Am, is back in the F3 European Championship this year. As we see the result in full, Esteban Ocon taking the win. Foco P2, Tom Blomqvist P3, then it was Lucas Au, Jordan King, Jake Dennis, Felix Rosenquist and Nicholas Latifi P7, P8, Dennis Van der Laar P9 and Gustavo Menezes P10.
Possibly, because Dennis Van der Laar is under investigation for his zealotry at the last corner. Felix Sorales is 11th provisionally from Tatiana Calderon, then Jules Shimkoviak and Santino Ferrucci. Roy Nissany 15th ahead of Giovinazzi, Galal. Michele Beretta's race, least said the better. Likewise, Max Verstappen and Hector Hurst we lost early on as well. But yes, we've just had confirmation on the timing screens that 26, Dennis Van der Laar, is under investigation. Tom Blomqvist, third, podium, points, all of that is good, but never did he look really likely at being able to have a go at Fuoco. Was that down to the car's pace, or was it down to the nature of the circuit? Fuoco, I think, will be very pleased once more to be on the podium. It's another 1-2 finish for the Prema Power team, but this is the man who takes win number 7 of the season. Esteban Ocon has probably already worked out now where he's going to put an FIA Champions Trophy at the end of the season, because little by little, he can see it in the distance and it's getting bigger and he's getting closer to it.
To take you up on your at the moment comment of a few moments ago, up and down the pit lane we have the Deutsche Post runners with penalties that are handed out to drivers, and just seen a Deutsche Post runner after the end of the race returning to the office. So wonder whether something has been issued, and whether, as soon as we get that, of course, we will bring that to you.
Race 3 comes up here from Moscow Raceway later on, and local time, that is 25 minutes past 5. We're 3 hours ahead of the UK here in Moscow, as the drivers now make their way to the podium with Esteban Ocon, the man for the top step of the podium. Win number 7 of the season goes the way of the Frenchman, and Prema Power Team scores this great 1-2 finish, and therefore Prema Power Team, the winning team, represented on the podium as well. And it will be Antonio Fuoco who ventures out for second place. Go to the other end, shout to the engineers in the pit lane, but Antonio Fuoco knows where to stand. Frustratingly for him, it's the second step. It's not a win, but he's on the podium, and that's all good. And then to break the monopoly of Prema Power Team for Carlin, out comes Tom Blomqvist, the British driver, son of World Rally champion Stig Blomqvist, the Brit on the podium as well.
It wasn't great to see Reddy Rosen say, that way, that way.
Yes. And with Esteban Ocon on the top step of the podium, the unofficial theme tune to this year's championship, I think we'll hear once again, because in his honour, very shortly, we will have, for the 7th time this season, the French national anthem. He's done it again. Esteban Ocon on the top step of the podium. And bear in mind that he's going to do this twice, because he'll be back in a few minutes for the rookie podium, as Yu He Jiang, the sales director for Hankook Tire Russia, makes his way out with the trophy. And Prema Power Team has yet another trophy for the mantelpiece for the team's representative, but Rustem Teregulov, the owner, indeed, of the Moscow Raceway.
And what a good job he's
Absolutely.
done, if I may say.
Yeah, yes. What a fabulous facility he has here. He brings out the trophy for Prema Power Team. And it is a new circuit, only opened in 2012. Yes, it feels modern, it feels new and clean and tidy, but it's well looked after, and the reception that everybody has had here this weekend has been very helpful, very friendly. It is quite a long schlep from the airport, and facilities nearby are negligible. There's a petrol station outside the main gate, and there's so little fun you can have at a petrol station for a week's visit to Moscow. But as a circuit, as a facility, everybody seems to like it. And if there were a few more hotels nearby, I think that would really be the only thing the teams would change, because once you get here, it's really good. It's a good track, good facility, easy to work at.
Yes.
And everyone's very positive about it.
Yes. You're right. And, of course, it will develop, and we hope some of those facilities will come in that will save us the bus ride we had last night. That would be for sure. But there we are, the podium being celebrated, and it is the first of 2 podiums that we're going to get. Of course, the rookie podium to come as well. And here comes the Henkel Trocken. And I think Mrs., who didn't stand in the right place on the podium, is going to get a soak-in.
Yes, this is how it works on the podium. I'm afraid the team's rep always cops for some of the champagne. But Esteban Ocon, along with Antonio Fuoco and Tom Blomqvist, celebrate their top 3 finishes.
She's given up. She's just been jet-washed, isn't she?
Yes. But there's a hug at the end of it, so all's good. But that fizz in the eye doesn't half sting, I'm afraid. So, handshakes, congratulations all round. And is Tom going to throw the bottle to the mechanics? Hold your breath, here it comes. And, oh no! It didn't smash, thankfully, but it wasn't a great catch.
No.
And all the other Carlin engineers distanced themselves. No, he's new. Doesn't work for us. No. Anyway, didn't smash. Well done, chap. And there's enough left in the bottle for the rest to have a swig. What goes on at Prema? Are they going to drop the champagne bottle down to the engineers as well, I wonder? Well, Esteban Ocon has yet again been the dominant driver. He wins for the 7th time this season. But not only that, he is doing all of this as a rookie, by which, I mean, it's his first season in Formula 3. He's not in his first season of car racing, like Max Verstappen, for example, but he is in his first season in this championship in Formula 3, and that's how he gets in as a rookie. He'll be on the top step of the rookie podium in a few moments. As far as the Drivers' Championship is concerned, this is where we're up to now. Ocon versus Verstappen. The margin increases. Verstappen is being caught a little bit by Lucas Auer. Blomqvist 4th, and it's Fuoco, King, Rosenqvist, Dennis, Latifi, and Giovinazzi to round out the top 10. The rookie podium has on the top step Esteban Ocon. For 2nd place, it is going to be Antonio Fuoco. It's almost a replay of the race, of the overall podium, forgive me, as the 2 Prema Power Team drivers are there for the top 2 steps. And then we await Jake Dennis. It will be for 3rd place in the rookie podium. Ahead of him, Tom Blomqvist, Lucas Auer and Jordan King, all seasoned Formula 3 racers. So Jake Dennis, who's been a regular on the rookie podium this year, is there once again as we hear once more the Marseillaise.
We've gone back to track 3 in the remix album of French national anthems. That was the longer version, David.
Oh, yes.
And here once again to make the trophy presentation from the Hankook Tire Company. The Russian sales director makes the presentation to Esteban Ocon. The Moscow Raceway Chief Executive Officer then makes the presentation to Antonio Fuoco.
And Jake Dennis at the other end of the podium will receive his trophy from the Hankook representatives. Hankook, big supporters of the championship and indeed the DTM, the partner series. This championship runs in tandem with the DTM at many, not all, of the weekends. But from here, it will go to the Red Bull Ring with the DTM, then Nürburgring with the DTM at Imola, standalone, and they hook up at Hockenheim at the end of the season. We hope the championship has not been decided by then. We really want this with all due deference to Esteban Ocon. While it's great to watch a master at work, we'd like it to go down to the wire if we can in that final meeting of the championship season. So they've had one go with the Henkel Trocken. Jake Dennis says, well, I'll take mine, thank you very much. Take that to the team. But 2 bottles remain untouched on the podium. The drivers now will go to their press conference. But Esteban Ocon once again shows to the world why he's looking like the likely champion and why he has been really such a star all season. Not only is he fast and smooth, but if you take those slight blips out of the way of the Norris Ring and Spa, he has been consistent. He's been on the podium for the bulk of the season. And 2 wins out of 2 races at Moscow Raceway continue to make this a great season for Esteban Ocon. There's one more race to come later in the day. Can he do the triple whammy for the first time for him this season? Join us later on to find out. For now, from Dave Richardson and David Addison, bye-bye.